Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to talk about what is Docker client. So in past, we already talked about that in client containers, images, and registry all together in Docker engine, followed by that in architectures. But let's dig into more detail. So in Docker client, will be interact with Docker registry, Docker container, and Docker images with help of a Docker daemon with and followed by that in a REST API. So in a high level, we can perform the command like in Docker build, Docker pull, and Docker run. So all kind of this is not a limited one. We'll have a number of other command as well. So once we'll perform this command, it will be interact with a REST API and interact to the Docker daemon. After Docker daemon will be decide to go to the image or like in with like in Docker images via the containers or via the registry. So the client will be interact to the Docker daemon, and Docker daemon is again a application so which will be take care about that in entire Docker. So like in containers, images, and registry, and it's a kind of a daemon thread, which is located into the Docker hub. So let's talk a bit more. So what is Docker client? So in theoretical, we can say that in a Docker client, Docker is a primary way that many Docker users interact with a Docker. When you use a command such as a Docker run, the client sends these commands to the Docker, which carry them out. The Docker command uses the Docker API. So Docker API will be the REST API. The Docker client can communicate with more than one daemons at a time, So you can remember these ones. And now what I'm going to talk, let's do some of that in a command. But we talk like in Docker build, pull, and run, and but we'll not do at the time because it will become in container images and registry in details one by one. So I'll be go through that in kind of a baby step or like in a step by step, which will be give you the more detail. So let me log in. So I have already make my master node up and running with help of a VMware. So you can follow that in any of one of that in installations, and which is not mandatory, like in only VMware or like my Oracle Docker, like in VirtualBox or like in by the browser or like in Docker with a desktop. You can choose that in any one of them. And what you have to do, if you are running with a virtual box, you just you have to log in with a putty. I have already logged in with a putty, and I'm in that in a server. And let me clear the screen. So once you clear the screen, see here we have a pre-installed Docker, which we have already done into that in installations, but we have not seen anything more than the versions command. But here we'll talk a bit more about that how we are going to use the client. So what you have to do first, you have to type Docker, and if you like in press the enter, you'll be see that in all list of command what will be needed, like in Docker and then option and then command, options and then command. So what are those options? Options we can pass the config, context. In short, you can pass the hyphen a small c, hyphen capital D for debugging or hyphen debug, and many more. Similarly, for command, you can pass that in these are the all list of a command, and each and every command have their one detail you know de details. So what we'll do in this one, so we'll just understand how the client command will be executed and the outcome. Of course, we'll not see that in more details for each and every command now, because some of the command will associated with a swarm. You can see that in a node, manage swarm node. So once we understand the swarm, then that will be come into the picture. We'll see that in once we'll do that in image into the manage image. Once we'll do the networking, we'll see that in networking. And similar for container managed like in builder and like in container command, then container and engine, and followed by that in what we have others. And these are the sub other commands also we have, like in attach, list, rm, ps, pull, push, and many more, followed by the tag and wait. So we'll see one by one. So this is the first, we can say that in your client is installed or not. So you can verify by that in just typing the Docker or in any one of that in installations. If you are able to see such kind of a things, meaning your installations is done. Then how to see that in a version? So while seeing the versions, what we have to do, we have to type docker hyphen v insert. So you'll be see that in just a client version. So what client versions is installed in that? And Docker versions 90.0.3.13 build number, whatever it is additional number. Then you can also type that in a version hyphen. So sorry. So once you'll type that in a Docker, remove the hyphen and the versions, then you'll be able to see the uh, client and server versions as well. So what is saying that now the client Docker engine community, the server Docker engine is a community, because we install the community editions only. We have another editions as a enterprise one. Okay, so learning purpose, just we install the community one, and the version saying that in more details now. We have once we have removed that in hyphen Docker version. So what is the versions of a client API versions? That is a REST API. Go versions, the commit and build OS architectures Linux and AMD 64 experimental false. So this is all about the client. If we'll talk about the server Docker engine community, the engines like in our versions is that in almost same API versions, Go versions, and it's saying that in when it was the build and the experimental context Git and and these are that in others run C command, and docker init command is also there, which is for swarm. So these ones will be like in high level. You can also do that in a quick one hello world for this. Let's say docker run hello hyphen WRLD, but I'll not let you know that in more details, because we have to understand that in uh, in details once we'll talk about that in a image part. But just say that in we can run that in one small applications, and we can say that in hello from the docker, and this is our one first applications. We'll not talk in more details into that in how these applications work, but as a client we can run that in any command like in docker, then run, and what is that in a name up that in a images. So that's all about in this lectures for a client. Just we understand that in a client, in recap I can say, client will be in perform the any command. That command will be go to that in docker daemon, and docker daemon will be communicate to the container via the images, or that in docker image via that in a docker daemon via that in registry. It will pull the container into that in images and in container, and then the applications will be live. So that's all about in this lectures, and thanks for watching. Please let me know if you have any questions in a Q&A sections. I'll be more than happy to answer. Bye bye.